on retirement. There was a couple of people asking concerns about my voice. My grandfather went to a Pentecostal church. I'm a devout Baptist, so my voice is fine. We were here last night till around 9:30. Everything was good, and the Senate ran as the Senate does, always leading the way. But I'd like to start this. Meeting by asking Senator Cardin Summers if he would open us in a prayer. What mic are you on, Brother Five?
May we pray. Our most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, again we come to you seeking wisdom and guidance. We ask that you continue to send the blessings you send to this wonderful world that we live in, especially the place we call Georgia. Please lead, guide, and protect all of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
And for the record, and to make sure everything in the world stays balanced, I do want to point out for the record that Homer Bryson is here. I will tell you, right before the meeting started, Homer came up and conveyed a story to me. He said he was talking to a friend of ours in the Department of Corrections, and one of his correctional officers came up, and as y'all know, we're going to be able to put a substantial pay raise in for those men and women who work behind the wire and the walls of our prisons that are hidden from everyday society and who do an incredible job. And when the employee heard he was going to get a pay raise, he went and told his boss, he said, "I'm excited now I can buy a new used truck." Apparently his current used truck's a little wore out, so he's going to get to go out there and buy him a better used truck. And that's the reality we face when we come into these committee meetings, and I remind everybody of it, is that we're not here to take care of ourselves. We're here to take care of our brothers and sisters and fellow citizens that are out there doing the job that makes this state the best state to do business in and the safest state to live in. And we walk past them in the Capitol each and every day, and there's a kind man that comes in my office every evening around 7 o'clock to make sure that things are straightened up. And it's individuals like that we hold these committee meetings, and that when we start discussing retirement and pay and things of that nature, I would hope that everybody has in mind when they're trying to determine what's good, positive legislation and what is a waste of time. So with that, we'll get rolling. Is Representative Scoggins? So is he hiding behind the pole? Don't hide, Judge. We like you.
You already introduced my helper here.
Things were going good there for a minute, Judge. And this is a hearing on HB 263, and it looks like we're working off LC 432244S.
Yes, sir.
All right, Judge. The floor is yours and Homer Bryson's.
Okay, well, did find out, Homer was just telling me a minute ago that he had AFib on Tuesday, so we did find out that he's got a heart. So
I think we may want to follow that up with a report from his physician, Judge. I wouldn't take Homer at his word.
You always need that, huh? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is House Bill 263, and this is a bill for the probate judge's retirement fund. It only does one thing. It would allow for a more current mortality table for determining benefits for survivors of a retired probate judge. The current table being used was established in 1951, and we want to bring it up to date with a more current mortality table. The actuarial study shows no impact on the fund. And if you have questions for me or Mr. Bryson, we'll be glad to answer them for you.
Well, I guess my first question would be to Homer. And Homer, in your role that you currently sit in, what's your involvement with this type of legislation?
I serve as the Secretary Treasurer of the Probate Judges Retirement Fund.
Any committee members have any questions or concerns? Mike 5.
Please, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without going through it, what the tables were 1951?
Yes, sir.
What changed exactly? Just
Well, people are living longer now.
that's what I said, because of the
Yes, sir.
life.
Yes, sir. And this would be more in line with other retirement funds like the state retirement fund and other funds that use a more current mortality table.
I'm assuming you got the blessings of the probate judges.
I'm sure, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What number is that, Bill?
6. Thank y'all for being here. I totally agree with it. Just a comment. You mentioned there's no fiscal dollars involved with this, Homer.
No, sir, that's correct.
Even though we're living longer and people are going to be receiving benefits, I guess it just strings them out over a longer period of time rather than shortening them up.
And the only person this would actually benefit is the spouses of members. And when you're doing those calculations, you'll be using a more current mortality table versus an older table. And so it's not a drastic change, but the audit report came back and it indicated that there was no impact to the fund. The fund was capable of managing this change.
So the judges have the opportunity to include their spouse as a benefit, or not. I know in teacher retirement systems, some teachers don't include the spouse as a receiving spouse. Do we have the same situation with this?
Yes, sir, you do.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And I really hope that by doing this, that this don't give my wife some hints, because I'm a retired probate judge myself, so I hope she don't get any ideas about the more current mortality.
I think that ship is probably sailed, Judge.
Well, that may give her a little more opportunity to find the next guy.
That's right. And Senator Hickman has agreed to carry the bill over in the Senate for me.
Be happy to.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Is this one of the few funds that has not had this done in a while, or do we have multiple funds across the board that are still working off of outdated information when it comes to life expectancy?
The other funds that I'm familiar with didn't have this in the code. Whether it was changed years ago, I just don't know the answer to that. But the other codes allow you to use current tables.
Okay.
But this one specified this 1951 table, and it also specified a target interest rate. And so we're asking that we be allowed, the board be allowed to, and our actuary be allowed to use a current table, and also board set our target interest rates based on, what's going on in the world around us today.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate you. Any other questions from the committee? Okay. Thank you, and we'll be notifying you, Representative Scoggins, at the next hearing when we'll take this up for a vote.
Okay.
I do appreciate you. Thank
Thank you, and have a good day.
You too. Okay, our second bill is Representative Leverett with HB 780. Not seeing Representative Leverett of the 33rd. All right, we'll continue moving on. Next is HB 1056. The man, the myth, the legend. And committee will be working off LC 432213. This is Alternative Investments for Georgia Firefighters Pension Fund. Thank you, Representative Hill.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and committee members, for having us this early in the morning after a kind of a late night last night. So I told my friend here, Morgan, that if I start to fall asleep, just wake me up, please. All this bill is actually doing, and I'll read a few things off to you. It's not a physical bill. The state will not bear any additional physical burden. The bill just simply raises the cap on alternative investments from 10% up to a maximum of 15%. And that don't mean that they will do that. It just gives them the a choice of doing it if they choose to, and max out at 15%. And that's basically what it does. Just 10 to 15. And y'all might know the gentleman that's going to carry it. I hope you do, Senator Mullis.
Did you say that was Senator who?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you could spell that last name for us, we'd appreciate it.
I'll do my best.
All right. This has nothing to do with horse racing, does it?
No, sir, not
Okay.
at all.
Just wanted to make sure.
No, I don't have a horse in that race.
Very good. Would your witness like to testify?
I think he would like to give you some of the details.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Morgan Wurst. I'm the executive director of the Georgia Firefighters Pension Fund. And as Representative Hill said, we'd like to be able to invest up to 15% of the portfolio in alternatives. Whether or not we get there, that's to be decided, but obviously pending your decision. But just to give you a little information, we've been investing in this space for over 10 years now, almost 11. During that time, we have had capital called from us totaling about $69 million. Over that same time frame, $54 million has been returned to us. So net, we're down about $15 million, but the portfolio that we have currently is worth $83 million. So we feel like this has been a very wise investment decision for us over the years. And to put it into rates of return, we have our 10-year internal rate of return, and this is net of all fees, is 20.93% over that period of time. If you look at the public markets, the closest benchmarks that are usually referenced when they're comparing to private equity, which would be the S&P 500 and the Russell 3000 index, they were both 16.6% over that time frame, which is this is a 4.6% extra rate juice we've gotten out of these alternative investments. And since we've started this program, which is coming up on 11 years, our since inception return is 20.74. We're not promising this, but we feel like over the long term that we can get at least 200 basis points or 2% over the public markets, at least. Internally, we're expecting a little more than that, but that's what we would tell people. So diversifies us a little bit and gives us another arrow in our quiver, I guess.
Thank you. And the numbers you're giving, the 2093 return versus the 16.6, are those just on the alternative investments within
Yes.
the fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the return on the fund overall? And listen, just a guesstimate, is it somewhere in that area?
I
or?
do happen to have our board book from
Okay.
today, so
Great.
I can't reference that. That was as of 9/30 of
Right.
21, but
Has the performance rate been similar, or have you seen a better performance rate in alternative investments as opposed to more traditional?
the rate of return historically is higher in alternative investments because, for the main reason, you don't control the cash flows. So they are considered illiquid. However, Georgia state law pretty much puts you in stocks and investment grade bonds, which are highly liquid. So you have 85% of the portfolio, if this were to pass, to cover any cash needs.
How close are you to the 10% cap right now?
We're at about probably between 6 and 7%, but I don't want to go into the details really, but the way they calculate that with private equity, they count uncalled commitments against you. So even though it says 10%, it's really hard to get to 10%. So this 15% will more than likely get us to around 10%, possibly a little bit higher, but we would never go beyond 15%. So, yeah.
Okay. Hang on just a second. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just wondered is past performance a guarantee of future results?
It is not, sir.
Oh, just wanted that disclaimer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Six.
Yes, sir. 6. Yeah, just a couple of quick, more general information for me on retirement. how many retirees are out there now, and then do the volunteer firefighters, do they participate in the retirement fund and all too? How does that work? This is just general information.
And I just happen to have, this is what our board is being updated on today, so this is perfect. Let me tell you, currently our
Well, you told me out in the hall to ask you.
we have 6,600 retirees or their beneficiaries. We have active membership of 13,600, and we have almost 3,000 volunteers in the pension fund. Volunteers are welcome. This is a voluntary fund, and they are welcome to join. And to earn credible service, they have to meet certain call requirements and certain training requirements. And if they do that, they get credit for it.
Call meaning fires?
Yes, fire
Fire.
calls.
Okay. Thank you.
So you said it was 3,000 volunteers? Is that-
It's 2,843. So it's it fluctuates, but
It's right
it's close to 3.
Yeah. And some Senator Hickman just said they have to have so many calls?
No, they don't. They have to attend a certain percentage of the fire calls for their for their department or their station.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't want them hoping for fires. What you're saying is when fires do occur, they have to be able to attend a certain percentage.
If there are no calls in that area, they can still earn
Right.
credible
But
service.
the thing is, they can't go out and get all the certifications and go sit at home and refuse to respond.
Correct.
To do the job that they're going to benefit from your fund for doing.
Correct. They can do that, but they won't earn credible service for us for that year.
Good. That's fantastic. Any other questions? Representative Hill, I appreciate it. We'll get you on the schedule. You're probably back on next Wednesday, and by that time, the committee will have a chance to do their homework, research this information, and hopefully we'll have a positive vote for you and all the good men and women that take care of us around the state, keeping us safe.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you.
Okay, and our final bill today will be House Bill 1288 by Chairwoman Taylor. And we'll be working off LC 432286 Sierra. S.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Today I bring you House Bill 1288. This is relating to the State Employees Assurance Department, and it's to provide assignments of certain group life insurance benefits to be payable to the funeral homes. For several years, we've seen this issue come up several times. It's kind of an unusual problem. It has to do with settling of death claims for our retired employees. I am in the insurance business, and the normal process when you have a death claim would be for the beneficiary to go to the funeral home, make arrangements, they sign a contract, and they sign what's called an assignment of benefits. It's very much the type of form you sign when you go in the hospital and you're telling the insurance to pay the money to the provider. Well, our retirees' life insurance program does not accept assignments. So when there's a settlement, the money has been going to beneficiaries, which of course is where it is, but they are not in turn paying the funeral homes. And it had been a problem for a while, but now since COVID, we have lost a number of our retirees. And in my district, we had Southwestern State Hospital that closed, and we had a large number of these retirees that we have lost over the last couple of years. And it has become a very large problem. Funeral homes, like everybody else, need to be paid. Oftentimes it's going to a distant relative, and they are not coming back and taking care of that obligation. And our retirees need to have that assurance to know that their services will be paid in the normal process. The bill requires the funeral home to submit the standard documentation. It would be a notarized statement, the death certificate, the copy of the contract, things like that will be submitted, so you know that it is a true assignment of benefits. The department did have some concerns because they've always done it a different way. But the biggest concern was they don't want to open this up to other people, bills that you owe or something, and it does not. This is very distinct, and it is just for those funeral services. We narrowed it very much. Payment will only be up to the cost of the funeral. Anything that's over that benefit will go to the beneficiary. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chairwoman. I know we have a couple of friends here from the plan, from ERS. If Jim or Kelly would like to come up, and we got an extra chair up here. One thing, Madam Chair, is do you have any approximate numbers? Because I know you talked about the COVID of
Right.
claims or anything we have where beneficiaries are not following through on the obligation to pay for their loved one's funeral, the retiree who may have expired during COVID?
Just by the number of funeral homes that have contacted me, I don't have, facts according to how
Yes,
many
ma'am.
people have passed away, but we have several funeral home directors in the house. And this is where they brought it up to me, but I had already heard about it from home. And it popped up a few years ago. And since then, it's just gotten worse. And that's hands-on from people in the house and from my folks at home. But I don't have a number statewide or anything like that.
And a kind of a sidebar question, Madam, we have no funeral home directors in the Senate.
Do we need
And
to get you one?
no, ma'am. I'm a little concerned that y'all have as many as you do over in the House, and I was wondering, has there been some kind of study done on life expectancy of House reps to where they felt that y'all needed an overabundance of funeral directors over there?
I don't think so, but they have formed their own caucus, so.
Okay, that is a creepy fact. I do appreciate that. Jim, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. What mic number is that? Yes, ma'am.
I just have to say that when I was a member of the House years ago, there were a number of funeral home directors that I still remember.
Yeah.
So there must be something.
There's something
to
over
it.
there. Maybe they're looking for business. I don't know.
That could be. That could be it.
Yeah.
We've got one running for the Senate, they say. So yes, Senator Hickman, be careful. I'll worry about you now. Jim, ERS, have y'all had an opportunity to take a look at this legislation?
We have, yes.
Okay, and she was saying the department had a few concerns.
Yeah, we do. So it's kind of an unusual situation to have a life insurance benefit that is administered as a retirement benefit by the retirement system and encapsulated in the retirement statute of the state. Nevertheless, that is where this particular benefit exists. Title 47, which encompasses all the statewide retirement benefits, not just ERS, provides no permission for assignability of benefits for any of the retirement benefits. And we can speculate as to why the framers did it in that manner. I believe it was for the protection of our beneficiaries and recipients of these benefits. And while I agree that the bill is very narrowly crafted in its current form, I am concerned about the possibility of follow-on effects down the road. Should a bill like this pass, would essentially be breaking the ice on assignability within Title 47 and opening that door for similar requests and claims and proposals by other folks for other benefits, and that's a level of risk that I'm not comfortable with.
And when you talk about assignability in breaking the ice, are you referencing to, right now we have a group of individuals who are professionals in a particular area, and they see a problem there, that by going in here and giving the assignability to a funeral home, that somewhere down the road it may be something where they want to go in, and because of another possibility of something happening, whether it's unpaid debt or,
we certainly know that there are many categories of creditors that are out there. And so, I'm just concerned about who's going to raise their hand next, essentially.
Yeah, and I think when you bring up debtors or those who offer debt, the list is unlimited in some cases. Is that Senator Hickman or is that Summers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
We rely on you for a lot of things, because, I mean, you give it to us straight and you give a lot of expertise, Mr. Jim. I didn't know anything about this bill until I started getting texts on it about 2 or 3 days ago saying, hey, guys, have y'all passed something to help the funeral home people out from my local funeral homes? And my district were calling me, and I just happened to have about 12 in my district. So, I mean, I've got a lot of funeral homes. And I said, I don't have a clue what you guys are talking about. And I tried to do some research to come back to it. Obviously, it was coming from the House side. Where is a pathway to get this? Because out of the people that I called back at my funeral home, at least 5 of them told me this is a major problem, and so I mean, how would you see a pathway?
I would suggest to you that if somebody signs a contract with a funeral home and then later refuses to pay, that's criminal behavior. That's the pathway.
But he did.
Not him, the person that signs the contract with the funeral home to get the services provided.
Senator Hickman.
Yeah, my question along those, something along those lines is that aren't y'all just a conduit for this? So the assignment would actually go to the insurance company. The insurance company would be the one.
We
that
are
would,
the insurance company in this case. The State Employees Assurance Department is ERS. Our board is the board of directors for SEED.
Is it insured by a policy?
No, it's a trust fund.
Excuse me. I'll chair the committee.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
manage the questions.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I'll manage how they're answered. I do appreciate that. Senator Hickman, were you finished?
Yes, sir. I'm just curious about, and if you answered the question and said the ERS is the insurance company, that explains. I was wondering.
I spent 31 years under a consolidated government, which was self-insured, and my defined benefit and everything was done through the ownership of that plan that was managed by the consolidated government. And so even though there are some third-party providers that offer actuarial studies and some other things, the state of Georgia, the ERS plan is the insurance company. And there are, again, they use outside resources, as does any public business to offer information and everything, but the state of Georgia manages all the benefits for the employees of the state of Georgia. So this is where it comes in. Chairwoman, have we noticed that this is a problem in the private sector also, where individuals are signing and look, my best friend in the world was my mother. I had somebody show up at my house when I was 23 years old to sell me a cemetery plot for $5 a month. I asked them how they got my name, and they said some lady named Elizabeth Robertson gave it to them, and that was my mother. I called her and asked her, did she know something I didn't know? And she said, you need to plan. At 22 years old, I was certainly not planning on dying, and I'm now the proud property owner of some real estate at Park Hill Cemetery in Columbus, Georgia, thanks to my mother's proactive love and behavior. But when she passed away and I went to the funeral home with my 2 sisters to plan her funeral, my mother had pre-planned. So what we were required to do, my mother pre-planned this when she became a full-on single mom. She had bought such a great plan that the equipment that she had asked for had long been out of date, but it well paid for everything that was available. Really nice. My mother had a really nice service, and my sisters and I were only obligated with writing an obituary, which when you're mourning, it's nice to know that you don't have to walk through and start kicking the tires on caskets and things like that and asking prices. So I appreciate those individuals who do think ahead and want to take some of this burden off their family members. But I do have some concerns when we go inside of a large apparatus as is ERS and we start moving plumbing and wiring around, that we may be creating a gap that allows other self-serving groups to come in and want the same thing. I'm also a little concerned about the number of people we're talking about within the ERS that this has directly impacted. If this is a legitimate problem, then we certainly need to drill down and find out what the problem is. A slight correction, if I enter into a contract, and again, Homer Bryson's here and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, if I enter into a contract with a funeral home and I fail to fulfill that obligation, then that's a civil matter. And one thing that Georgia is not short on is trial attorneys. So somebody would have to go out and sue the estate or the beneficiary of the ERS death benefit or whatever to recover costs. But again, I don't own a funeral home. I have a close friend who does. I've not heard of this problem from him, if you will, and they're in Columbus, but I'll certainly be reaching out to him this afternoon. We do have a question, Senator Davenport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. When I was contacted about this, my understanding is the funeral home just want to be paid. I want to ask you about the since there are no assignments of benefit, I guess I want to know what's your hesitation really about this. Is there a way, since it's narrowly crafted, is there a way that this can be done without having others come up?
Well, a bill can be crafted as narrowly as you want it to be crafted, and this bill is crafted in such a manner. My question to you is, when somebody in the, I don't know, pick an industry, who is a creditor, comes to you and says, you know, I have a pretty similar problem and here's my story, so let's get that one done, okay, so now we have another bill. And then you have another industry later, and at some point, either we're letting everybody do this, or we're trying to draw arbitrary lines between one industry and another, and I don't see how you can do that on any kind of a consistent, rational basis. I think once you open the door, you've opened the door.
For anyone who's ever had the opportunity to be an executor of someone's estate, while you may think it's a honor, once you get in there, you realize that, and I think the state of Georgia allows something like 3% or 6% or whatever, but you go in there and you, first of all, inventory all of the assets within that estate. And your first obligation is to settle all debt within that estate. And so what a lot of people find out is they've been hired to do a job for nothing, other than the fact that they loved and cared about the individual who was there. But what they have done is they have inherited all of the responsibility that that individual, if they had lived, was obligated to fulfill from a creditor standpoint. And having stood on the sidelines and watched a close family member as an executor of an estate, and it was a very complicated and elaborate estate, if you will, I saw the absolute difficulty of this. And I could see where in estate planning, somebody would step up and say, well, because the largest amount of my debt is in this particular area, I would love to go in and assign my death benefit in that area so that when I do die, my family doesn't have to worry about that part of the process. And so that is the only thing that I think it's important that we have a hearing today, and we will have a much more thorough hearing next week, hopefully based on the calendars on both sides of the General Assembly, to get down on this, because there's one thing I do know about the chairwoman is she would not be here in front of us with a piece of legislation that she does not feel comfortable with. And so I think there are some good questions to be asked, because I know the committee appreciates it. I don't think when people see on your letterhead that you're on the Senate Retirement Committee, I think some people see that as just, well, apparently they needed some folks on a committee and they put them over there. The damage that can be caused by the actions of this committee in making uneducated votes and just listening to the surface of the concerns that constituents or businesses send us is extremely dangerous. And This system has been running for many, many years. There have been tweaks to it, adjustments to it to get it to where it is today. We had a bill here earlier where they were talking about addressing something that had not been addressed since the 50s. And that's an important thing, and we should do that. But when we start adding bolt-ons and other little nuances to the plan, we have to think about that pebble in the pond or the butterfly effect. That we have a lot of retirees throughout the state of Georgia who are absolutely dependent on this plan to take care of them throughout the rest of their life, and we don't want to do anything to impact the safety and security and stability of this plan. So I would caution my committee members, when people are sending us correspondence to support or not to support legislation, look at their motives. Another thing that my good friend Homer and I think about every day, based on every conversation we have with every individual we run into, what do they want out of this? And rarely do we find somebody that doesn't want anything. But with that, is that Chairman Walker?
Number 12.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think under normal life insurance from a private life insurance company, death proceeds to the beneficiary is outside of probate. Is that your
That's
understanding?
correct. Yes.
So creditors cannot attach
Correct.
the death proceeds to a beneficiary.
Correct.
To me, this is, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, is this not true that this is certainly just strictly optional for the beneficiary?
Correct. They have the choice.
And may I further ask a question? So if the decedent, I think is the right word, maybe, I don't know, but did not make previous plans to take care of his funeral or her funeral, and a loved one wants them to have a funeral or it could be a cremation or whatever, which most of us would want for our loved one, and there are no other resources to pay for that funeral. This gives the beneficiary, who would otherwise get the money just to keep for them for whatever they wanted, an option to use some or all of that money to pay for their loved one's funeral.
That's correct. That's what this does. It's an option to give to that beneficiary.
And
Thank you.
one more question, Mr. Chairman.
That is the way they're usually done.
So this is not a the control under this scenario, the way I read it, is in the hands of the beneficiary, not the funeral home.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns from the committee? Jim?
I would suggest that is not entirely the case, because the funeral home, given this option out there, can then require that assignment before they will provide any benefits, not just the signature on the contract, but the actual assignment.
Okay. Chairman Walker?
Well, of course, I mean, they can require payment up front too. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me, that argument, but
The argument is to keep
I mean,
ERS out of
they cannot bury them or not cremate them.
The argument is essentially boiling down to keeping ERS out of that transaction. We'll pay the beneficiary. The beneficiary is then responsible for paying the funeral home costs with which they have contracted to pay. ERS should not be involved in a private transaction like that.
And on this legislation, does any other committee member have a question? Then I'll close with this. On this, if I am the ERS employee and I assign this benefit to McMullen Funeral Home in Columbus, Georgia, and my death benefit far exceeds the amount that I choose, I decide to go with a cremation, which is, say, $2,000. Does the benefit goes to the funeral home? what if the benefit is greater than the cost?
They only pay the funeral home the amount of the contract. So if there's a benefit of $10,000 and it costs $2,000 for a cremation,
Right.
they will send $2,000 to the funeral home, $8,000 to the beneficiary.
So when I opt into this, do I pick a beneficiary and a funeral home?
No, it depends. Normally, when you have a life insurance, a
Right.
benefit, you pick a beneficiary, and you would say, Mary Smith is my beneficiary. Mary will go and make the arrangements. She would sign the contract with the funeral home. This is what I want in the funeral. It's going to cost $2,000 or $5,000. They would sign the contract. At the end of the funeral, the wishes of the deceased are being met by their family, who they've told what they want in their services. And this way it is going to be delivered through the funds of this plan. The beneficiary, who then is in charge of the money, says, pay my bill, pay the bill for my mother or my aunt, my loved one, and then any proceeds go to them.
So ERS, the plan would receive and my wife's in charge of my life insurance, and she selected the beneficiary of it, which I believe to be her. But if so ERS then becomes the accountant where they split my benefit.
They would issue two
then,
checks. That's
okay.
way a normal life insurance. I've processed hundreds of life insurance.
No, and I agree. And
Yeah.
and one thing we have to wrap our brain around a little bit, and in my world I see this, ERS is not a normal insurance company. And very little about ERS is normal, as is TRS and the others. But Senator Hickman.
Yes, sir. I'm going to kind of relate it to the business world. It's not unusual in the business world for an individual to have a $500,000 life insurance company and owe Synovus Bank $100,000. Well, Synovus Bank would not be the beneficiary of that policy. They would be the assignee on the policy.
Right.
So when that person dies, the insurance company, because being the Synovus be the assignee, they would not get the $500,000. They would get only the amount that's owed to them.
That's correct.
The $100,000, and that's the same situation here.
Well,
This is not a beneficiary situation. This is an assignment, and so that's what you're saying.
If the beneficiary chooses, the employee, the retiree, hasn't picked the funeral home out in most cases, and even if they did,
That's right.
it's still going to go through that beneficiary, whoever
right.
they're leaving it to.
That's right.
It helps the beneficiary to sort the money out. It's going to where the obligation that they have signed.
Yes, so Senator Robbins, so if this group term policy is a $50,000 policy, and my funeral is $15,475, the most Joyner Anderson Funeral Home in Statesboro, Georgia could get would be $15,475.
Correct. That's correct.
That's correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't think there's a lot of concern with the division of the money. My concern is the mechanics within the ERS that would be required to be adjusted to take on this very delicate and I think in some cases cumbersome issue.
Agree.
Yes, ma'am. Senator Davenport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So ERS really just want to stay out of the transaction. I understand you said the floodgates might come open, but let me ask you, is this more work for you all? Do you think this is just more work, or you just interested about the floodgates there?
It's a modest amount of work. That's not the issue for me.
That's not the issue.
The amount of
Okay.
work is not really the driving force here. It's about the knock-on
Others
effects.
coming.
And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
ma'am.
Madam Chairwoman, how many, I guess this is a problem in your area. What's the hospital that closed there?
I'm
Did you
sorry?
mention, what's the hospital that closed there?
Southwestern State Mental Hospital.
Southwestern
And we had
State.
we had
Yes,
675 employees, that most of them retired. A few moved on, but it was long-term employees. And it has just grown. It has grown as an issue as we have aged as a state. Our employees have aged, and it became quite significant to funeral homes. And again, I'm not just looking out for funeral homes. It has been brought as an issue. I have constituents just like every one of you do. And I just don't want it to be where a state employee's family is turned down to do a funeral because we don't get the bills paid. And that's what I have heard funeral homes say. They're great people and they know them from the community, but if their services are not being paid for, they cannot continue to do it for nothing. And that has been a problem. Sometimes it's a distant relative that doesn't even live there anymore. A child has moved away from Thomasville, and they get the money and they don't come back and pay. It's just a tough one, and I'm not trying to be a collection agency for the funeral homes. I want to see the dignity of our retired employees met, and they deserve that.
I agree 100%. They do deserve that, and we will have an additional hearing on this legislation. Like I said, it'll be much more in depth. I encourage all the members of this committee to, again, do your homework. Those constituents who are reaching out to you, I would encourage you to have a little more in-depth conversations with them. Let's see what the numbers are that this is impacting. But I do want to remind you that there's a very big difference between the private sector and the public sector. The private sector is a for-profit sector. The public sector, where we are, is not. No matter what people tell you, we are not a for-profit sector. I can show you my bank statement. But if there are not any more questions concerning this particular issue, then we will stand adjourned. Thank you,
Thank
Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.